Hello, my friends. How are you today? Did you get to see the eclipse yesterday? Well, I was so happy that I took the day to hang out with my friend and go watch the eclipse. It was just such a nice community event, wasn't it? I hope that you were with other people as you were watching the eclipse, or even if you just jumped out of your sewing room for just 10 minutes just to see what was happening. Protecting your eyes with the right glasses, it was really interesting to see the moon go right in front of the sun. Now, I love the quilt that I have behind me. That is my Blue Moons quilt. But when I'm looking at that quilt, I see the solar eclipse. It's those blue moons that are going in front of the sun. And we didn't have a total eclipse here in Massachusetts. We were about 93%. So what we ended up seeing was these different crescent suns. Normally we see a crescent moon, but in this case, it was the crescent of the sun with the moon in front of it. So much fun to see, wasn't it? And because it is kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity, of course, not once in a lifetime, but I didn't pay any attention to the eclipse the last time that it happened. So for me, being 58 years old, maybe I'll see another one of these. Maybe I won't. Who knows? So I wanted to take the time and actually go and celebrate with a friend and watch that eclipse. So, okay. So I just heard a notification, and my son said, as soon as you hear that notification, find out where it's coming from. And I don't see it. I don't see where it's coming from. So I apologize. I'm trying to get him to work on silencing all of the notifications so that we don't have that happening during our events. You were in Arkansas, Teresa, and you had 100% eclipse. Wonderful. Mary, you're in Michigan and you get to see it too. Wonderful. Elaine, you had heavy clouds and you weren't able to see it. Oh my goodness. And Eileen from New York. Eileen, did you get to see the eclipse? Eileen, I owe you a phone call. So I'll hopefully get to that later on today. Let me know if you're available later on today for a phone call. Okay, so my Blue Moons quilt definitely reminds me of what I saw here on the eclipse. But what you saw might have been very, very different from that. I searched this morning because I have another quilt that is called Total Eclipse. And actually, I called it Full Eclipse, but oh, you know what? Maybe Total Eclipse is a better name. I'm going to just go ahead and share my screen with you. And I will show you that image of the quilt that I made years ago. And that one is very similar to the Blue Moons, but not only does it have the crescent moons, but it has the full eclipse blocks as well. So I'm really happy that I found that. I actually found a photo of the actual quilt today. I think I probably gave that quilt away because it's nowhere to be found in my sewing room, but I don't even keep records of some of the quilts that I give away. So who knows where that quilt went to? Probably went to a charity or to a niece or a nephew or something like that. So the Full Eclipse quilt is a lot of fun and it is super easy to make. Now the technique that I use to make the full eclipse, I'm using a similar technique today to make the quilt that's on my back wall. So let me stop that share. The quilt that's going up on the back wall is a quilt that I found in Blanco, Texas, and it is made with circles. So the same thing with the quilt behind me. The Blue Moons quilt is made with circles. Now we have tools for cutting circles and cutting them easily and accurately over and over again. So today we are going to continue on with the Blanco tulip quilt. Now that we know how to make the centers of those blocks, then we're going to be adding some tulips to the outside of those centers. But I want to just discuss with you how we're going to make the centers for those blocks because I changed my mind. And instead of having the quilt set like the antique quilt that I found, I'm going to be setting it on point, as you can see on my design wall. So when I set those blocks on point, the cross on the circle ends up straight up and down. And I don't think I like that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make that circle once again today so that you can give me your opinion. Should it go straight up and down like the block that's already up on the wall, or should it go on the straight of the block, which puts it on the diagonal when the blocks are set on point? So I need your opinions before I go any further with this project. Then we're going to dive into making the tulips, and I'm going to give you some options for making the tulips because there's loads of different ways to make these tulips on the block. And I'm probably not going to make it exactly like the antique quilt. I'm going to stylize it a little bit, use our tools to cut out some tulip shapes, and you're going to give me your opinion on which tulips you like best. Okay, outside of Rochester, New York today, cloudy yesterday, but enjoyed the total darkness and saw the crescent leaving the sun as the clouds broke. Wonderful. Oh, that's exciting. And Irene and Bev from Albion, New York. This morning, that's where you're from. Okay, Eileen, good. We'll touch base later on today before 4 p.m. 4 p.m. The Blue Moons is in my book, Hearts and More. It's on page 61. Absolutely, Mary. Thank you for pointing that out. Blue Moons is a simple, easy quilt to make. And so is the quilt that we're making today. The Blanco Tulips is a super easy quilt to make. So let me show you what I've been doing. I went through all of my 30s fabrics and I cut out 4-inch squares of all of my 30s fabrics. Then I was taking 2 of those squares in one colorway. For example, the 2 purple squares here, taking 2 squares in one colorway and then seeing what I thought of putting those with 2 other squares in a different colorway. So like I did on the back wall, I've got the blue and the yellow. I could do purple and yellow. I can do purple and green instead of the yellow. So we have to match up our 4 squares for the center of those circles. So I went ahead and did that, and I sewed together my 2 squares at a time. Now it's really nice to chain piece these. And then as I'm standing here, let me just grab my scissors. As I'm standing here, I'm just going to cut apart these chains into sets of 2. So I've got sets of 2 where I've got kind of a reddish color and a green like this. And then I've got my purple and my green like this. And I've got some more purples and greens. I had a lot of purples and greens. Now you'll notice that I didn't pay any attention to the seam allowance. I did not reset my machine with my 1/4 inch foot because on this quilt, it doesn't matter if you have a 1/4 inch or not. When we are piecing the 4 patch for the background, for the circle, it doesn't matter if we have a true 1/4 inch. All we need is that 4 patch matching in the center. And then we're going to sew those 2 together, have them matching in the center. I'm going to have to swap these 2 because if I sew them this way, I'm going to end up with 2 greens together and 2 purples together. So I'm just going to swap those 2, do my purples and greens matching, and then I'm going to put them across this way. I'm going to match those seams in the middle. I'm just going to do a little pinch test to make sure they match. And then you can come with me to the sewing machine as I sew those two together. So I have all different pairs of 2 now, and I'm going to put those 2 together into 4. And we did this last week, but I want you to give me your opinion on how we're going to lay those out. Now, also, I'm going to be laying out a diagonal set quilt. And when I do that quilt set on the point, I need some triangles and some setting squares. So when I do my setting squares and my setting triangles, I don't think I want those to be just plain white fabrics. So I've done a little bit of work in EQ to look at some other options instead of putting plain white on those setting squares and setting triangles. So I've gone ahead and I've sewn my 2 squares together. And now I have to make sure that my rings and things tool, my 7-inch rings and things tool, is going to fit on that square. Just wanted to make sure that I didn't take too large of a seam allowance, just demonstrating that it doesn't matter. Well, it does matter up to a certain point, right? You can't take such a big seam allowance that you can't fit your 7-inch circle on this square. So now I've opened up all my seams on the back, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my glue, and we're going to do a little bit of glue applique just like we did last time. Now I do want to put my camera down on my workstation. So let me go ahead and do that. I want you to see up close what I'm going to be doing with these circles. So one of my background squares had a big old stain on it. In fact, I was using up old fabric, and I found a piece of white fabric, and it was folded, and it had a stain that repeated because something had dropped on it. Well, I was able to center that stain in the very middle of the fabric. So what we're going to do is we're going to use up this fabric even though it has a stain on it. I'm not going to worry about that because it's going to be covered over by my applique anyway. So I love the fact that you can use up old fabrics for applique, and you can work around any problems like this stain on the background. Alexa, turn on iron.
Good. What do you want to turn on?
Turn on iron. Okay. All right. So I've gone ahead and set an alarm because I didn't want to lose track of time. I set that chime to go off every 15 minutes. So I would make sure that I was moving forward with this project for all of you. Now, when I'm pressing my seams, I'm just going to press with a hot iron. I'm not going to use any type of sizing. I'm not going to use any type of starch, magic sizing, or a best press or anything like that. I don't want any chemical barrier on the fabric when I'm going to applique. Now, in this case, I'm not going to applique with Misty Fuse, but you still get a better result when you don't use any of those products on your fabric. Now I am going to grab my rotating mat this time. The last time I saw you, I forgot to use my rotating mat, and it made it really difficult to cut these circles. So this time I want to make sure I'm using my rotating mat. I'm going to fold. I did press this open, but I'm going to fold this back right along that last seam because it's going to take me half as much time to cut if I use the seam line on my half circle right here. Now, how can I make sure I've got 4 exact quadrants on this circle? I'm going to place the arrow on this seam line here, and I'm going to place the 90-degree marking on the seam line that goes from side to side. So let's go ahead and take time to get that really accurately placed. There we go. And now with the Grace True Grips on the back of the tool, it makes it really easy to cut out that circle. Nice sharp blade makes a big difference as well. Okay, now because I've already pressed that seam, it's laying nice and flat. Now I do want to give you a little hint that I didn't use last time. It's a little trick that I just learned, and it's really for glue applique only. One of the reasons why I don't love to use glue applique is because the glue gets all over the place when you're trying to place your applique pieces. It's really hard to place that piece just right. If you have to move that piece and you've got glue on the back, it makes a little bit of a mess if you want to reposition that applique piece. Now, Misty Fuse is a whole different story. Misty Fuse is repositionable, but when you are using the glue applique, it is hard to get that glue in exactly the right place. So here's a little tip for you. I know that I want to place this circle directly in the center of my block. So I have scored my block in quarters, and now I'm going to run my Hera marker around that circle. So I'm marking the placement for my circle using the Rings and Things tool to mark that 7-inch circle right down the middle. So these diagonal lines, these cross lines are critical so that you can place this circle directly in the center. Now, why do I need to do that? I've already got these cross lines, and I can line those up right down the middle of the block. But the whole secret is when you're looking to use your glue for glue applique. I just pulled out my glue and then I've lost it. Here it is. I pulled out a whole bunch of glue this time because last time I had trouble getting one of them to flow. Sometimes I have these glue bottles that are old that I've had hanging around forever, and I need to get one of my newer ones, and there it is right there. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that glue right on the inside of that Hera marker line. I'm actually putting the glue on my background fabric, not on the applique fabric. So this is a little trick that I read recently in a magazine for when you're using glue for applique. I'm not the only one that ever used this method. When you're using your glue for your applique, go ahead and put it on your background fabric exactly where that glue is needed. And now I'm going to be able to place that applique piece and just press that in place, getting it right on that marked circle. I can now move the applique piece around if I need to, and the glue is exactly where it needs to be. And I haven't gotten glue all over my hands, and I haven't gotten glue all over that background piece. Now, I want to show you the difference between these two pieces, the one that I made last week and the one that we're making today. Let's take a look at these two pieces so you can spot the difference. Okay, so this circle has the lines going on the diagonal lines, and this circle has the lines going on the straight lines. Then we're going to be adding our tulip bits. So I'm going to put the tulip centers right on that diagonal line like this. And I've decided that all my tulip centers are going to be an orange color. That is reminiscent of the antique quilts that all had that orange color. So I'm actually going to tack these in place. And what I love about Misty Fuse applique, I did not use Misty Fuse for this big circle because it doesn't need Misty Fuse. And with the seams in there, the Misty Fuse would make the seams show. But because I'm just doing regular applique out here without any seams, I'm tacking these in place because I've got Misty Fuse on the back of my fabrics. So let's continue to design this block. And then we'll look at this one as well. We'll put them both back up on the wall, and you can help me decide which of those designs you like better. So I'm going to keep this off to the side right now, and I'm going to go ahead and get my my orange leaves cut for another one of these blocks. So in order to cut the orange leaves, if I had my fabric all fused and ready to go, I could stack up multiple orange fabrics, layer after layer, and make these flower petals or leaves in the shortest time possible. But all of my orange fabric, I haven't fused that yet, except for this one piece that I did this morning. So let me go ahead and cut some more of these 4-inch leaves with you. Now, if I cut 4-inch leaves on this piece of fabric, I'm only going to get 2 at a time. Well, that's okay. I'll get 2 here, and I'll get 2 on my next pass through. So let's go ahead and cut 1 this way. And you can see the benefit of having all of your fabrics fused and ready to go. Normally, I would be cutting out not 2 leaves here, but 8 leaves if I'm using 4 layers of fabric. Let me just cut out 1 more. That way we can get both blocks done, and you can help me decide which layout you like better. Now, I do think this would make a really nice pattern because it is a super simple quilt to make. It's something that you could get done in no time at all. It is perfect for comfort quilts, baby quilts, or charity quilts because you can get it done so quickly with the rotary cut applique method. Now, I want to look at some of these other fabrics. When I looked at the quilt that I saw in Texas, I realized that every tulip was different. So I went ahead and fused a whole bunch of different fabrics, and we're going to try a couple of things here. We're going to try making our tulips with 4-inch leaves, just like your standard tulip shape with 3 4-inch leaves overlapping. But we're also going to try some other shapes for our tulip. I haven't written this pattern yet, so I want to decide what tulip shape is best. So oftentimes in my quilts, I often make this style of tulip that, whoops, I didn't go all the way through. I need to change my blade. Let me just line this up to make sure that I don't miscut. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to put this aside because I think we're going to want a different shape for our tulip. But just in case we just want to go with the simplest of designs, we can use 3 regular leaf shapes with that orange in the center. That's the one consistent thing I'm going to go with. I'm going to have the orange in the center of every single tulip. So that is one style of tulip that we could make. I'm going to press this one together. Now, the benefit of this very simple tulip is that they're easy to make and you can make them in no time at all with this method of cutting with the Hearts and Leaves Galore tool. Then, once you get one of your tulips laid out on your applique pressing sheet, go ahead and lay out the next one. And I'm going to put the leaves in the exact same position, and having one under the other when you're laying these out is very helpful to get them all exactly the same. Now, another thing you could do is you could draw this tulip on a piece of paper, put the paper underneath the pressing sheet, and you can do the same thing, getting all of your tulips exactly the same. So I'm going to peel this one off. I'm going to peel this one off. Now, I would want to make 4 of these tulips for one of our blocks, but let's start looking at the block and seeing if we like this tulip design. Okay, so we're starting here, and we're going to put these tulips on the diagonal here. Now, we have to decide if we like this tulip shape design or if that's a little bit too plain for us. So I'm going to put this one aside, and I want to play with some other tulip shapes. So I'm going to take 2 fabrics that are the same. I want them to be mirror images of each other, so I'm going to put them right sides together. And then I want to play with my other Hearts and More tools and see if we can get a little bit different tulip shape. What if we did something where we are making those tulips swoop out and then come together? So, for example, we could take our our Leaves Galore tool, and we can simply divide this tulip right down the middle and get 2 petals from one. But I'm not so sure that those petals are going to be strong enough to go against the center, that yellow tulip, that orange center of the tulip. So let's give that a shot and see what we think to see if this is going to be strong enough for the orange center of that tulip. And I don't think it is. I think these are a little bit too small. So let's play with some other ideas. I'm going to take these 2 together. They are similar. They are exactly the same. So I'm going to put those right sides together. Now let's play around with our Hearts and More tools. Can we do something with Hearts and More to make those tulip sides a little bit more significant, a little bit bolder? So I'm placing the arrow right down at the bottom of my 4-inch leaf shape, and then I'm going to swoop up here with this top part, going right through that center. Now, what this is not going to do, it's not going to give me 2 equal pieces right here. When I did this with the Leaves Galore, I got 2 equal pieces, so I would be able to use both of those tulip pieces, that one and this one. But with this tool, I'm going to be cutting a bigger part down here and just trimming off a little bit here on the side to give this more of a rounded tulip shape. Now, I kind of like this shape a little bit better, where you've got a little bit more heft on the bottom, and we're going to have that going out from that tulip center. So, yep, that one's a little bit better than the first one. It's a little heftier, and I kind of like that tulip, but I think we can do one step better. Let's just play around with another piece of fabric and see what we can do to make that tulip center. Well, I really like what I came up with using the tool like this and swooping it out. I really like that look, but maybe we can do that with a different size of our tool. So let's check this one out. Let's put the arrow right down here on the bottom of the fabric. And I'm just going to play. I'm going to swoop it out to the side like this, just like this. And now what if I come back in with that 4-inch Leaves Galore? What if I come back in this way and I create the top part of that tulip? Now, what's really fun for me is you get to play here with me on Sewing in Slippers. I have not pre-designed this tulip block. I'm simply playing to see what shape and what size I like best. This is what I do when I am designing a new block. I play with it and play with it until I find something that makes me happy. Now, I kind of like this tulip. It's all one piece right here, and we just have that orange center coming up from the bottom. So let's play around with that shape. I might want to make it a little bit smaller. I might want to make it a little deeper in the center here, but I really want to play with that shape and find something that I like that's based on that shape. So I'm going to fold this again. I want to bring this up a little higher here and have it swooping out to match that point. I like the point, but I don't like where it comes down to. So I'm changing my Hearts and More tool. I'm now using the 3-inch end of the Hearts and More D, and I'm going to come up by about 1/2 of an inch, but I'm going to keep that curve just about the same. Let's do this curve right here and see if we like that design better. Now, the nice thing about playing like this on the video is I can go back and I can find what I like and what I don't like and go back and watch exactly how I did it again so that I can reproduce that shape over and over again. So I really like the way that this is panning out, but I do think I have to do a little bit more playing. But my main question is, let's get these blocks up on the wall. I haven't finished making, let me just change cameras here once again. I haven't finished making my centers yet because I couldn't decide. Do I want that X to go on the diagonal lines or do I want that X to go up and down? So let's get these 2 blocks back up on the wall again. You can help me decide whether or not the centers are going to go straight across like this one, straight up and down, or whether my centers are going to go, let me find my other block here, the one that I just glued together. Here it is. Or if I'm going to put my blocks where the center goes on the diagonal line, it's the diagonal line of the quilt, not the diagonal line of that square. I still think I've got my work cut out for me. I've got to do a little bit more play to decide what style of tulip I like best. Do I like the simple tulip, the very traditional and classic style one made with 3 4-inch leaves? Or do I want to do something a little bit trickier, a little bit fancier, and use one of the tulips that I made using the other method? So let me see if I can find that one. There's the purple one with the, there we go. So we have to decide, do we like the leaves and the tulips lining up with those straight lines, or do we like those leaves and tulips coming right out of the center of this quarter circle? So I want you to vote for me. Do we want them set on the straight? That would be this one right here, the blue and yellow set on the straight. Or Do you like the one that is set on the diagonal of the quilt? So number 1 would be the blue and yellow on the straight. Number 2 would be the green and purple set on the diagonal. And do you like the little stylized tulip better? Or do you like the tulip with 3 equal pieces? So tulip number 1 is going to be the stylized tulip. Tulip number 2 is the one with 3 equal pieces. Go ahead and vote for me on those comments, and that's really going to help me make a decision on this quilt. Now, I did talk a little bit today. I had an email that went out to my Magical Garden people. My Magical Garden is a quilt that we just started all over again. And we're going to be making that quilt over the course of the next 9 months. It is perfectly appropriate. It is just the right time to start your gardens. So if you haven't joined us already, it's not too late to join. We are just into week 4 of our project. That means we're going to have our first checkpoint next week where we're going to get together and look at blocks 1 and 2 from my Magical Garden. So I did want to just take a minute and talk about that solar eclipse once again. The solar eclipse means that we have the start of a new moon today. That full moon is going to be being replaced by a new moon, right? So whenever we have a new moon cycle, so going from a full moon and it's going to go down to a crescent and back up to a full moon again, that is the time, that new moon cycle, that is the time to be resetting our thought process, to be making goals, to be setting goals for the next moon cycle. So I'm going to challenge you to set a goal for this next, I think it's 28.3 days of the new moon. Set a intention for that new moon cycle, and let's think about what we can get accomplished during that new moon cycle. It's not quite a month, it's just about a month, but go ahead and make an intention for that next month. My intention for this next month is to get all of my Baltimore blocks stitched. Now they're probably 80% done. I still have some random stitching colors on certain blocks. So my intention for this new moon cycle is to get my almost in Baltimore blocks, the red and white version, to get those all stitched. During our Ahead of the Curve membership classes, we're going to be designing borders for that applique quilt with a good portion of our membership that is making the almost in Baltimore blocks. So my intention for this month or for this new moon cycle is to get all of those blocks stitched so that I will be ready to design my applique blocks. And I think another good intention is to make some decisions on this block to get the 5 blocks made. We're just going to make a small little quilt for this one just to prove out the theory of how easy and fun this is to make. I'm not going to make a big quilt, but I also want to design that alternating block. Well, it's not the alternating block, it's the setting block and the setting triangles. I'm excited about doing something a little bit different. I'm going to do some piecing in the setting blocks and the setting triangles, which is going to make this quilt a great little scrap quilt to use up all of your 30s fabrics. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. I would love for you to set your intention for the next moon cycle. What do you think you can get accomplished? What's realistic for you? What is your goal for this next moon cycle? It may be just getting organized, finding a place for everything in your sewing room and putting everything in its place. That's been one of my goals for the past moon cycle. And you can see that my sewing room is much more organized than it used to be. And I'm finding it a little bit easier to put my fingers on the exact tools that I need when I need them, because I am putting up pegboards. I'm making a hook for everything. I'm putting everything in its place so I know where it goes. And then when I'm done using my tools, like my Roxanne glue based it, I'm going to put those exactly back where they belong in the cabinet that has its name right there, so that the next time I go look for those glue bottles, they're going to be right there, and I'm only going to have the ones that are working. I'm going to throw away the old ones because everything has a place and everything is in its place. And sometimes the place for some of those old things is right in the trash, so that I don't keep grabbing that bottle that doesn't work. So if you need some help purging, getting rid of things, I'm going to be encouraging you to do that. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to be showing you some of the things that I found when I was purging my sewing room, some of the UFOs, some of the things I couldn't throw away, some of the fabrics that I'm just dying to use, like those 30s fabrics that I uncovered while I was cleaning. And now I want to have a place for them. I want to have a quilt where they are going to be used, and I'm going to use them up, get rid of them, and move forward to my next creative project. I hope you're feeling creative with the new moon cycle. I hope that you are finding a place for everything and putting everything in its place so that you feel motivated to work when you go in your sewing room. You don't feel discouraged by the confusion and by the mess, and you just feel a whole new level of creativity. That's what I wish for all of you, to be creative quilters who can create anything you desire by knowing the method that's best for anything that you wish to create. There's that notification again. I got to get my son down here to find out why that's happening when I've got all my notifications turned off. We are going to clear up that problem so that we don't always have those interruptions. Need to quilt those 3 flimsies for the show, and my room looks great. Oh, thank you so much. That must be Jane. Tulip 1 and the offset block. Okay, offset meaning that you're seeing it as an X, right? You're seeing it as an X. So that's what you're saying, offset. So the tulip is offset on the circle. It's not right on the lines. Okay, thank you for that. The last tulip and the tulips coming from the seam lines. Thank you, Elaine. 1 and 1. The diagonal circle, the one-piece tulip. Okay. Offset and tulip number 2. Thank you, Joyce. Skyline. I'm not quite sure what that means. S and Z leaf. Mary, let me know what you mean by skyline. I'm not sure what that means. So I am going to be looking for all of your comments before I make a decision on this quilt. I'm going to be trying out some other tulip shapes. Tomorrow, we have our last almost in Baltimore block. Now, I didn't want to give anything away, but there is a beautiful tulip in that almost in Baltimore block. So before I make a final decision on this tulip, I'm going to teach that class tomorrow. And that beautiful tulip block may lend its tulips over this block if I like them even better. So tomorrow I'm going to be playing with tulips as well with my Ahead of the Curve members. If you're in that class, I'm going to revisit this block, and we're going to add some of the tulips from tomorrow onto this block as well. Thank you all for watching my design process. I love to empower you so that you can look at a quilt and find out the way that it can be made in a faster, easier method, thinking out of the box and making it the Sue Pellin Designs way. Now, don't forget, we have applique demo days starting today. Watch for an email. If you have registered for applique demo days, you will have a Zoom link in the email to join us at 6 p.m. today. When you join us for demo days, you're going to find out about our specials. We always have a special during demo days, and today is no exception. There will be a free gift with purchase today. So if you come during demo days, find out what your free gift is with purchase. Then you can decide if you have something in your shopping cart at Sue Pellin Designs that you need right now. And when you do, you'll get a free gift with a $75 purchase. So check in with me this evening, 6 o'clock for demo days. We'll be there today and tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So until then, I'm Sue Pellin, and I wish you happy applique every day of your life. Bye, all.